Welcome to this week's Kashinori, and I will be reading chapter 2 of our book, Attack of the Giant Robot Chickens. Living in a chicken apocalypse is not quite what you'd expect. It wasn't as if everyone just woke up one day with a chicken standing on their chest, staring into their eyes. Even looking back, there was no obvious signs that it was coming, like mysterious disappearances or large random eggs discovered. It had begun as a normal day. I'd gone into town with my brother to catch a movie, but he'd left me at the cinema in Union Square while he went to find some of his friends. He couldn't just call them because his mobile had stopped working. I guess that this was the first sign. The second was probably the giant robotic chicken that crashed through the roof. I can't really remember the rest of what happened that day. I started running, people screaming all around me, desperate to find some place to hide. I managed to survive by falling in with some guys hiding out in the train station. I didn't know who they were, and they didn't know who I was. We were all too scared to care. A few months on, and I think they'd stopped being scared and just regretting letting me hang out. I thought about this while crouched behind the library. After we were sure that the chicken was gone, we hurried back to the train station. By this point, Sam had noticed that I'd left the food bag behind. "You idiot," he growled at me, still not confident enough to raise his voice. "I gave you one job and you left it behind. What are we going to tell the boss?" "He'll understand. Those people need that food, and this way they'll owe us one." He gave me a little shove and I stumbled. "Yeah, because we don't need food at all, do we? What was you thinking?" I moved out of the way, and another shove, and I glared at him. "We've got enough to last us for a while. They don't. At least this way someone gets use of it. If we'd have been captured, then no one would have had the food." By this point, we had entered the train station. I stepped further away from Sam and looked around. Even months after living here, I was still impressed by the sight. Aberdeen train station had been built back when Britain still had an empire and liked to show off by making things big and shiny. The glass roof was high above us and still mostly intact, letting in the weak spring sunlight. The marble floor shone through where litter was scattered everywhere. The air was colder in here, and I huddled deeper into my jacket. Security points were positioned between the benches and the tracks, but as we were already on the rails, they didn't really serve much point. We were used to clambering through them by now. Sam and Mike ignored me as we made our way to one of the trains that was still waiting for passengers, but who had never come. We'd been lucky. A sleeper service to London had been idling on the tracks when the first attack came. It was warmer than most of the other trains, and we all got beds. Compared to how some others lived, it was almost civilised. To get there, we had to get up off the tracks. As I scrambled up the makeshift steps that we'd made out of suitcases, I saw a silhouette in the door of one of the carriages, and Boss Noah stepped forward. Like the apocalypse surrounding us, the leader of our little group wasn't what you'd expect. He was skinny, with glasses and a serious expression. Like the rest of us, his hair was beginning to get a little bit long and stood out from his head like a ginger halo. His t-shirt was plain, brown, and unlike some, he hadn't taken the excuse to dress himself in the latest fashions scavenged from the shops. He was one of the oldest here at 14, but that wasn't made him the leader. If it had been zombies instead of chickens, then I think he wouldn't have survived very long. But against the chickens, he was level-headed and never took any chances. He seemed to be fitted for the not-so-glamorous roles of organisation and motivation. He couldn't have fought his way out of a wet paper bag, but that wasn't what was needed here. His intelligence could be the saving of us all. I don't think he liked me either, but at least he was good enough not to show it, except by sending me out on all of those expeditions. He stepped lightly onto the platform as we came towards him. "Sam?" "Mike," he said. Then his gaze swerved to me. "Jessie, where's the food?" Sam immediately puffed out his chest and stepped forward. "There was a catcher patrolling," he said. "We had to get out. I told Jessie to grab the food, but he left it behind in the library." Noah sighed and gestured. "Come inside and tell me about it." So we did, sitting on bunks in Noah's bedroom. Because he was the boss, he got a room to himself. As this was perhaps the only perk of the job, we were okay with him having it. Sam told the story by himself, with Mike nodding occasionally beside him. Then, when finished, Noah fixed me with his piercing look. "Is all this true?" "Yup," I replied, grinning at him. "I'd call the mission a success." "A success?" Sam spluttered. "But we didn't get any of the clothes we were going to trade the food for." I shot him a look. "We've got more clothes than we're ever going to need. We've got all of Union Square, and there were plenty of clothes shops in there. It was never about the clothes. It was about gaining another group's trust, and by leaving the food, we've done that." Noah nodded, though he didn't look happy about agreeing with me. "Jessie is right. We need to keep reaching out to other groups if we're going to survive. The library gang might not have anything to offer us right now, but we could probably use them in the future." Sam was even less pleased. He disobeyed a direct order and left behind vital supplies, and you're just going to let him get away with it? "Just leave it, Sam. What's done is done. Now go get something to eat." Sam pushed past me and stormed off, Mike trailing behind him. I waited a bit, then followed, but Noah called me back. "Jessie, stay close, would you? I've got a job for you later." I felt a flutter of apprehension, but just nodded. "I'll be in the dining car," I told him. To get to the dining car, I had to pass by the radio room. Somehow the chickens had managed to take down a lot of the electronic communications, and most of our mobile phones had run out of charge in the months since the first attack. But we had managed to salvage some stuff. I looked into the room in passing and nodded to the kid on duty. He ignored me and continued messing around with the radio, turning the dials and getting nothing but static. We had a couple of smartphones and a laptop as well, but we only used one thing a day. The ones we weren't using were hooked up to a solar charger outside. It's the only way we could get any information on what was happening, and even then there was lots we still didn't know. We didn't even have any idea what the chickens were. I mean, that it could have been anything from aliens to mutants that were somehow advanced enough to build these machines. We didn't get much news, but we got a bit, mostly from America. The UK government had fallen pretty quickly, and the chickens had spread into Europe, where they were slowly pushing forward. A lot of the world leaders had made various speeches, but the attack had caught everyone by surprise, and they were pretty slow to do much else except for talk. There was fighting going on, but nobody was anywhere near overcoming the chickens. Canada and Australia were supposed to be getting ready to launch a counterattack, but that hadn't happened yet. There was nothing new to hear, so I left the room and continued towards the dining car. The walls were papered with pictures warning people about the chickens and what they could do. Surprisingly, I was one of the few people who had actually seen a robot chicken. A lot of people who'd seen a catcher had been taken. Noah had told us to draw posters so that everyone knew what we were dealing with. Some of them were pretty good. There was a stylish shot of a chicken with lasers coming out of its eyes, one showing the explosive eggs they laid. There was even a diagram of the inside of a giant robot chicken. It had a kid being pecked up and swallowed, sliding down the chicken's throat and being trapped in its stomach. A lot of people had got freaked out by that one. As I slid the door to the dining car open, I was just curious how the artist had known what it was like. Maybe the zombie apocalypse we would have seen some action, a lot of blood maybe, but the chickens, well, we were in danger with them and not able to actually go anywhere. Our free time was usually spent in the dining car of the train, talking, playing cards or reading. I found myself a seat and started doodling in a notebook I'd found in Union Square. With half an ear, I listened to those around me. The conversation was always the same, different people going through the same motions. It would be about TV shows or YouTube videos from when there was TV and YouTube. Games they'd played on the Xbox or PlayStation. Casual stuff like you'd hear in any playground. And sometimes, when someone had had a bad day or the monotony was getting hard to handle, they'd talk about their families, where they were, if they were still free. Everyone had given up hope that any parents were still free. The captures took the adults first. But there were older and younger brothers and sisters that no one knew about. I could hear a couple of girls talking about it. I mean, my sister was smart, one of them was saying. She was in the guides and everything. I'm sure she's okay. I wasn't sure. Guides were tough, but being tough hadn't helped the army. And we don't know, the chickens attacked everywhere in Scotland. They could have just hit the cities. Maybe if we got far enough away we'd be safe. We should try it sometime, get as much food as we can and just follow the train line south. No one who went outside the city ever came back. I mean, it might be that they got to safety, or they could have just been captured. I know which one I thought was more likely. The other girl was smarter than her friend. Look, she said, putting an arm around her friend's shoulders. If there was help out there, then they'd have come to get us. No adult in Aberdeen managed to hide for more than a few days. We're safe here. It wouldn't be smart to leave. I was just nodding to myself when the first girl burst into tears. I miss my sister so much. Where is she? Where could she have gone? And that was the worst thing. No matter what we told ourselves, whether we thought our family and friends were captured or whether we hoped they'd escaped somewhere, we just didn't know. We had lots of thoughts, lots of guesses, but in the end, they were worth nothing. The girl's sobbing was beginning to get to me, reminding me of my brother and how much I missed him. I closed my notebook and got up, ready to leave. If Noah wanted me, he could find me in my room. I just reached the door when it slid open and the boss himself was standing there. A frown creased his brow and he gently pulled me through the door. Do you know what's up with her? He asked, sliding the door shut on the noise. She misses her family. He ran a hand through his hair. We all miss our families. Think she'll be okay? I shrugged. For a while. He nodded. There wasn't really much else that could be said. What do you think of that group in the library? I frowned at him. Was I about to be told off? I don't know. Like we said, I've never seen them. They must be reasonably organised to have survived this long. They knew there was a catcher in the area before us as well. They'd cleared out. Though I guess they could have had a good view. Do you agree with Sam? Do you think I should have left the supplies or not? He shook his head. Look, Jessie, whatever Sam said, you made the right call. You do know that, right? I sighed, but nodded. Yeah, I know. Then he fixed me with that special look of his that let me know trouble was coming. I'm glad you got back. I've got a special